confirmation from the teams.
Could you email us the rubric too, if possible?
Yes, let me do that right now. Information. Teams, if you're hearing this, if you could just send a message in the captain's group chat to tell us that you can see us.
What? They can't see us. Actually, the link works, so they should be able to see us.
Okay, did you try it on your phone or something?
Yeah, I tried it. It worked.
Okay. All right, guys, I just resent the rubric as well. Oh, no. Okay, none of them can see us. It says that it's going live right now.
I can see them.
You can watch it live via YouTube?
Yeah, I can click on it.
Oh, no. Okay, none of... Yep, I'm watching it live as well.
Use that link.
Do you have that link, Rishma? Can you send it to all the teams again?
Just about to do that.
Cool. For judges and for anyone watching, pretty much we're just going to go through, have the judges introduce themselves, go through the rubric really quick. I'm going to answer any questions that I can answer off the bat that were asked, but we only had 8 questions submitted. So we're going to go through those 8 questions. Shouldn't take long at all. Everyone's kind of going to give their take, and we'll just go in order. I have all of your names listed, and we're just going to go Keshav, then Arnab, Harjot, Lavish, Howie, and then we're going to go to the next person. We'll start the next question, and then we'll go on. Everyone's kind of going to give their take, and we'll just go in order. Someone watching this live? Okay. And so we'll go in order. We'll do that, and then we'll start from the second person and go all the way through. If you have nothing to add to a question, then don't feel like you need to add anything. Cool. Let's see if all the teams are in now.
Can you go in and just make it public so everybody can see it? Because we're on private right now for our event.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll do it. I'll do it now.
I think you can do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Because with that, there'll be that link.
Okay. All right, cool. So then we'll go through all the questions, and then teams will have the opportunity to live text in questions if they have any remaining. Oh, it's working for people. All right, cool. So then we'll go through all the questions, and then teams will have the opportunity to live text in if they have any remaining. Is anyone watching the live stream right now? Oh, it's working for people. Am I watching it? All right, so all teams are in. Welcome, guys. This is the judges meeting for GBC. We're so excited to have the teams here and have all our judges be able to make it to this meeting to answer you guys' questions. We're looking forward to seeing you on November 4th this year. Just going to start just kind of do a quick background on their Bhangra experience and how excited they are to be here, hopefully. Keshav, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, hi. Wait, I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said? You kind of cut off.
Just like brief introduction for yourself.
You cut off again. One more time, I'm sorry.
Just a brief, like 30 minute intro of yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. My name is Keshav Mantha from Philadelphia. I started dancing about 5 years ago, and I captained Temple University Bhangra for 3 years while I was an undergrad, and I founded BDS, that's Bhangra de Shauqeen in Philadelphia here. I also danced with VSB Boys. Yeah, this is my second year judging at Kart Bhangra, so I'm excited to come back.
Cool. Arnab?
Hey y'all, my name is Arnab. This is also my second year judging Got Bhangra. I graduated from Georgetown where I was a captain there for a few years and then moved on to DCMPA and got to dance with Kushali for a while, and that was lovely. And since then I've stopped dancing actually and try to stay involved with this kind of thing. I'm in my last year of medical school and business school now, and I'm excited to be here and work with y'all.
Awesome. Harjot?
Hi guys, my name is Harjot Gill. I have been dancing competitively for about 6 years now. I am the captain and coach of ASD Bhangra for the past 2 years. This is my first time judging. I'm very excited and I can't wait to see what you guys bring.
Lavish?
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Lavish. I used to dance back in 2006 is when I started, a little older than some of you. And I stopped in probably about 2012. My background was Gajde Gabru, an all-live team from North Carolina, and then also had the team I coached called Gajde Javani that competed for a while under music. Stopped Bhangra as far as dancing and went to teaching, and then learned Bhangra app about 3 years ago, and that's my connection to the scene still. Continue to judge and look forward to working with all you guys and seeing the great teams perform.
Howie?
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Howie. I've been competitively dancing for 4 years. I captained NBT from 2014 to 2016, and I'm currently the captain of AEG Bhangra, Anki Gabru, and this is my first time judging as well, and super excited to be here.
Cool. And the last person on this call is Reshma. She's you guys' team outreach chair who you've been talking to a ton.
Hi guys, I'm Reshma, team outreach chair, obviously. Many of you guys know me through my annoying emails, but you guys are going to continue to get my annoying emails, and I can't wait to see you guys.
Cool. So we're going to start this off just by going through the rubric. I know Reshma sent everyone an updated version of the rubric today. The judges had a meeting and they talked a lot about the ways that we can make the rubric better. Nothing major was changed with it. Everything was, very minute in a way that we thought people would be able to understand the rubric better. So I just want to go through those changes with you. I'm pulling mine up real quick. So the first change is in the beginning. There's no more use of stage attached to formations. The judges talked and they decided together that your formations are kind of use of stage. Depending on how big your team is, you'll use the stage wisely. And hopefully that would be, it's kind of lumped in with formation, so they didn't feel the need to add that second part to it. Does any judge have anything to add to that comment? Cool. Okay. The second thing that was kind of changed, oops, it took me out, okay, was in the performance execution section, we now have synchronization of formations and synchronization of actions. And the judges decided that that was kind of a better way to describe the equal weight placed on synchronizing the moves that you're doing as, instead of kind of wording those differently, to show you that those are when it comes to synchronization. Does any judge have anything to add to that? Cool. Okay. And the next part would be that we no longer have grace and flow lumped together in team elements. Just talked about it, and they used different ways. So flow could be the flow between one action and the next action, but also the flow within the same action. And in that section, it's kind of concentrated in your grace when you're doing that. So they didn't want anyone to misconstrue that. Flow from one action to the next would be in the beginning section. Under complex and innovative choreography would kind of be how each action melds with the next one. Any judges have anything to add to that? Cool. And the last thing that we kind of changed, we know in the rules we had a minimum and maximum time, but originally in the rubric there was only a maximum time. The minimum time was added to that based off what was sent to you guys in the rules, and that's 7 to 9 minutes for the full performance. We will be timing that, just so you know. So now Reshma is going to take us through, oh, actually, just kidding. So a lot of the questions that you guys submitted were based on how teams are going to be ranked at the end and judged. The judges talked about it, and they decided a specific way on how we would go about ranking teams, which is the same as last year. At the end of the competition, it's going to be done during intermission. At the end of the competition, all the number of points you have. And each team during deliberations will only be able to move 2 spots at an absolute maximum. So for example, if you, with all your points together, had 3rd place, the max you could move is to either 1st or to 5th based off deliberations. You can't move more than 2 spots. And that's kind of how the placings will go in the end. And each place that you're allotted, they'll just talk to you about it in the judges meeting and say, this is where you fell, but this is where, if they were to change it, this is where we thought you should fall instead. But none of the judges are going to go through and change your score to be any different from what it would have been in order for you to place a different. Does any judge have anything to add to any of those comments before we move on? Cool. Reshma is going to take you guys through the questions then.
Here we go. So for our first question that we got, it was, if 2 teams tied for 1st place, what in your mind would distinguish 1st from 2nd place? And any judge can answer. Arnab, if you'd like to answer.
I'm first. Okay. Tough question. Thanks for that. So I think that that ends up being a really tough spot. So if a team is, first we recognize the fact that the likelihood of a team actually tying in points for 1st is pretty small. We have 5 judges, so the likelihood of that happening is, very, very small. The likelihood of being close is given the, I know that you all are going to come with great sets in a couple weeks, so that's possible. And what'll set a team apart, I mean, quite frankly, it really is sort of situational. It varies by competition. It varies by what the performance looked like that day. I think when you have 2 teams that are so close and it comes down to that kind of deliberation, it really comes down to sort of like a holistic assessment of the performance. And I find that those discussions are less about like small mistakes. It's less about, oh, did this particular section hit or not? It is really more of like a holistic discussion about, was the set challenging? Was the set performed with a higher level of synchronization than the other team? And we, as much as possible, will try to stay to things that are more or less objective. Of course, you're judging dance, so that's subjective inherently, but we're going to try to stick to like hard things that we can, say that one team did better than the other. I don't think this will come down to like gimmicks or, like those kinds of things if it was that close. But again, it's really hard to say. It depends on what the situation really is.
All right, would any other judges like to add anything to that?
I can jump in. So if everything is exactly the same and you're talking about two teams that checked off everything on the rubric and they're completely in equilibrium, for me personally, I would look at some of the intangibles that would be, did one use stage markers, did one not? There's a degree of difficulty that is not in the rubric, which we all agreed upon, the judges agreed upon, but which is fine. But when it comes down to something of that level, when you're talking about everybody matching up the same two different teams as far as points, I would look at some of the things of difficulty, such as stage markers, if there's like a uniform malfunction that's smaller on one versus the other. I mean, that's where intangibles really come into play. And so, I don't know how much of that you can control before. Some of it you definitely can. If you want to take the risk without stage markers, I respect that because that's the way I learned to dance without them. And I know there's a degree of difficulty there. So, I think those little things that a lot of times teams like to ask right before the judges call, which will be these, how much you guys look into how you throw props and how do judges factor in stage mark, all those kinds of questions. This is where they can come into play in my book.
Anything else? Howie, Harjit?
Hey, what's going on? It's Howie here. So, first of all, in my opinion, I think that's very unlikely to begin with. But in those instances, personally, for me, it would come down to also those intangible factors, but more along the line of risk and entertainment is where that'll be the differentiating factor for me. Risk in terms of how difficult your set was in comparison to the other team that you tied in first with, and overall entertainment value, if I enjoyed one set better than the other. So those are my two factors in the case of two teams tying for first place.
Anyone else?
I have to say I agree with everything that my colleagues have said. I think at the end of the day, if teams are really tied in terms of points, it's going to be the little things that count. Were your dancers using neck tap properly? Were they smiling the entire time? Were there any Vardy malfunctions? Things like that that'll come into play, those small nitpicky things that can really differentiate a team rather than, they were both synchronized, they both had energy. How do you tell the difference? So it would be probably those small nitpicky things for me.
Yes, Chef?
I agree with everything that has been said thus far.
All right, so we're going to continue to our second question. Pretty generic question, basically just saying any preferences you guys have that we should be aware of, perhaps Vardy or anything general.
What was that?
Oh, it was any preferences you guys have that we should be aware of, perhaps Vardy or anything in general. We can start with Howie.
For me personally, I think the biggest pet peeve is preferences. I would have to say just overall entertainment value of your set. That's all dependent on how creative you get with that. So that's it for me.
Keshav, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I don't really have I don't prefer someone do one thing over another. I mean, again, this part of it's a dance, as was said earlier. It's supposed to be creative. It's supposed to be interpretation of what you want to do. That being said, yeah, kind of off of Howie's lines, I guess this is maybe more like a pet peeve. Finishing your moves. So, and we might get into that a little bit later with another question. But yeah, just if you're doing choreo, whether it's choreo, whether it's formation, finishing your moves across the team. And then my other thing is, and this is like a really small thing, but it really bothers me when it happens, when teams do batka and their backs aren't straight. It just really irks at me. So if I don't know. For me, if there's anything you're gonna work on from now until the comp, just make sure everyone's backs are straight. Just small thing. Other than that, I mean, just take your own what you think entertainment is, well, you're probably gonna be fine.
Lavish, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the big thing I like to see is the execution of the Bhangra itself, the steps itself. That to me is really important. So, if you stand out there, obviously you're going to have to go off the rubric and how that particular category is weighted, which is, I guess, by the interpretation, the current rubric is like 10 points, just purely on execution. So that obviously, that is like how I think all of us as judges are going to look at it. But if it's going to be that X factor to me, when I'm looking at one team versus the other, and let's say they're completely even on everything else, that would be the thing that would stand out to me. Who took the step and really maximized the execution of each and every step every time they did it, and that's the team that would stand out for me.
Harjit, you can go next.
I have to agree with Lavish. I think the most important thing for me in a routine is the actual dancing. Are you doing moves properly? Are you extending arms when you're extending arms? Are you picking up your legs when you're supposed to be picking up your legs? Are you finishing the counts? That'll really differentiate one team for another. So it comes down to the dancing.
And Arnab, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say that, well, first of all, I think that having judged, it seems like all but two of the teams on the list so far over the past year, some a couple times, I can, like, thinking back to the performances I've seen in the past and sort of what stuck out at me. One thing I'd say is definitely the energy at the end. It's so obvious when a team hasn't really run the last 3 minutes of the set or so many times, because energy drops off, and like Harjot was saying, the legs don't come up, people aren't extending, and then the dance just looks bad. And I'll agree with Lavish that I'm a big stickler on basics, because I think you have to check that box before you go any further in your set. So make sure people are doing Chimmer correctly, make sure people are getting low. I definitely look to the back of stage as soon as you start doing some of these more difficult actions, because I don't want to see people hiding dancers in the back of stage. So along with that, especially when the actions start to get a little slower, jugni, chal, these kinds of things, I start to look for detail. Are you really moving the modi correctly? Are you in sync with your gestures on stage? So those are important to me. And what we'll end with is so you asked about Vardhi specifically, and I sometimes am surprised by how many Vardhi issues I see on stage. I'll routinely deduct 1 to 2 points for like half the teams for Vardhi issues on stage, and this is a very easy thing for you guys to do. Plenty of time before you get on stage. Check the chadre, check the chunni. Like, there's no reason for you to have major Vardhi issues on stage, apart from like some, massive error that happens on stage. Pin the chadre, for God's sakes. Like, many of you have been doing this for years. Like, it's amazing how many times I've seen people get on stage without pin chadre, and then we see everyone's underwear. And you gotta, if you need to practice with them, do that. Take a video of yourselves, because I think, especially when you're getting to a competition of this caliber, I'd like to not have to deduct so many points for chadre issues.
Okay, so our third question, one team noticed that there was no section for traditionality of moves, and we're asking, what importance do you give to dancing on a folk form and executing traditional moves? We can start with Geshav.
Yeah, just personally, a lot of importance. Again, I guess, like my colleagues, execution and doing the Bhangra is a huge thing for me and a huge thing that I look for. And kind of the reason that we didn't include it was because it's, for all of us, it's very implicitly implied that the teams are going to be doing it. It's kind of almost an expectation that before you do anything else, you're doing Bhangra. Before you do, I don't know, ballet in your set, or you start doing like hip hop or salsa in your set, you're doing Bhangra in your set first, and then all that other stuff is like icing on the cake. So yeah, executing the moves properly, like Harjot said earlier, lifting your legs when you have to lift your legs, getting low when you need to get low, looking like everybody else, doing that. Those kind of really key basic things that make Bhangra what it is, or at least the way we're looking for, is by far the most important thing that you can do, aside from just and that's gonna lead to you executing it cleanly. So yeah, and that's kind of where the traditionality comes in. It's kind of it's like the thing that's implied in every single category in the rubric without actually being like a word traditionality for whatever 10 points, 5 points, whatever it might be.
Lavesh, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So just off my last answer, that's definitely one of the important things. But the way I think we kind of went about incorporating traditionality, and I guess this is sort of, we didn't explicitly state this, but I think we were all under the same impression, is that execution of step is part of the rubric, right? And the execution of step is kind of equated in that sense to traditionality. So how well are you doing the step? And that many times kind of goes hand in hand with traditionality. Now, not every time you can change a step and make it look a little better for sure, but more often than not, those two go together. Doing it to the utmost ability that you can execute that step. So that's sort of how I'm going to look at it when I'm judging. When it comes down to the steps and traditionality, under that particular category, under that 10 points, I believe that it goes under execution of the second category. I don't have the rubric in front of me. That you can kind of think of as in a way as traditionality.
Harjot, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with my colleagues. I think they've said it all.
Okay, Arnab?
I would just say that yes, implied. And if you think about what's actually included in a traditionality segment or as part of the rubric in most competitions, it's one, the execution, but two, like including some minimum set of actions. And we deliberately decide not to do that. I think that doesn't really make any sets more interesting or creative. I imagine that the teams that are coming will have a good variety of Bhangra actions, and we don't need to enforce that. So.
Howie, would you like to add to that?
I agree with everything my colleagues have said as well. I would just have to say, please finish your steps. All 4 beats need to be hit. Do not move to the next move until you finish the first one. That's probably the biggest pet peeve I have, and that's the biggest thing I look for in traditionality, because I understand from a lot of teams, everybody's form is very different across every different team, but it's just uniformity as a whole, as a unit, but also just finish all of your steps.
Thank you. So now I'm going to have Kushali chime in for a question, so she's not in the dark over there. So she'll be going over question 4.
All right, so the next question is the real wood props like wooden shikke, wooden kunde, and katos are harder to play compared to plastic props. Also, it's not traditional and proper props. Will there be any deductions for using such props? Do you want to start us off?
Sure thing. So I would not take off any points if you were to use plastic subs over wooden. However, I would take off points if you weren't, for example, extending your subs compared to another team. So the difficulty in playing subs is, are you extending? Are you clicking at the right beats? Is the entire team clicking together, or are your clicks off? Versus if you used a wooden sub or a plastic. So for me, it's how well are you using the subs? How much are you extending? And are your clicks on point with the entire team?
Okay, we have Arnab add to that.
So we do not have any deductions for using plastic shikke or any other prop variation for that matter. And so that won't be part of the discussion, I imagine, like explicitly. But I mean, let's be real. I mean, you know, if you come on stage with Wooden Shike in this day and age or whatever, you know, in 2017, I think that you are, it's part of your team's brand, and that says something about the team, and I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. And it's a choice you make as a captain if you feel like that's important to you in this competition. You know, maybe in some holistic, like unconscious mind, it may matter, but definitely not explicitly.
Any other judges have anything to add?
I guess, I agree with exactly what everybody said. It's not something that I would take out for. But going back to that first question of the things, if teams were completely equal and, you know, based off the rubric, they're completely equal, this is an intangible for me. So, you know, I would take that difficulty factor with wooden subs being heavier, for example, into consideration if teams did the exact same level of execution and everything else. That would be an intangible for me that would play into who the first place winner would be if they're completely tied. But yeah, I wouldn't deduct or affect points as is based off the way the rubric is now, like Arnab said.
Anything else before we continue?
Cool. Okay, the next question is, what do you value most about a performance? Keshav, you want to start us off?
What do I value most about performance? The ability, it's kind of an abstract answer, the ability to leave people talking afterwards. That doesn't mean that you necessarily do some crazy gimmick, but it just afterwards you leave people talking. And a lot of my colleagues have judged before, and I'm sure like they can speak to, you know, they watch a performance, and after that performance is over, you know, you lean over to the person judging next to you, and you're still whispering about it, you're still talking about it, or you're still talking about that performance, you know, an hour after the show is over, or maybe like during intermission, you're still talking about that performance. It's not something quantifiable. It obviously draws in from every element that we've discussed, you know, finishing your moves, doing Bhangra first, and then building everything on top of that, being clean, looking like a unit across the team, having entertaining, all those things come into play and leaving makes people talk afterwards, the way they feel after. I think that's the most important team it has.
Anyone want to add?
Like anyone, you mean, or the next person?
Anyone or the next person. Arnab, will go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. For me, it's always been about a team having some sort of identity on stage. So the way I always try to talk about this is, if you took off your vardi and you weren't wearing your team gear and you were dancing on stage, would I know it's you? And I think that says a lot about a team. If you can sort of create identity for yourself on stage, and what that means sort of more practically, I think, is that when you put together your set, avoid having it look like 6 different people made each section and you just sort of cobbled them together. To have some like sensical progression through the dance, like ups and downs, and something more dynamic than just, oh, we go from Kunde into Shike into Tumar, and like, you know, I've seen that a million times, and even that's fine, but if you have some story you tell with your dancing, I think that just brings so much to the dance. So that's what
Harjot?
I think something that I value the most is a good balance between energy and grace. So I think nowadays a lot of teams focus on having the most energy and making sure that each move is, you know, has 100% energy, but they do forget about the grace aspect of Bhangra. So for example, if you're doing Jumar, you have to make sure that you're doing it graceful and you're adding in that extra nakra. Not every move in a Bhangra performance has to be explosive. there's a way to make an impact with a graceful move as well. So I think teams that have a good balance between energy and grace stick out the most to me.
All right, Lavish.
Yeah, well, her joke stole my freaking answer. Yeah, based off of what she just said. So I'll go ahead and then steal Howie's other answer. I think if you take Bhangra being a strong base as kind of the preference, and what else stands out to me besides obviously that is definitely the entertainment factor, right? So let's say a team can do that. Well, then the next thing is how do they also entertain? Like Arnab said, tell the story. There's different ways to entertain. It's not just energy. It's not just gimmicks, but it's also the other things that go into that performance. So yeah, I think that's definitely important with the way the rubric is worded. Besides energy and grace, that joke stole my shit.
All right, Howie.
Well, Lavish stole part of my answer, so that's first. But yeah, like I said earlier, and I agree with Lavish, it's the entertainment factor. And what I mean by entertainment factor, meaning each segment has that. It's not that each segment, one's good, the other one's okay, whatsoever. Each segment has a purpose, and each segment is entertaining in its own different way. It's where that's that big differentiation, is that with a lot of sets, what you see is that the progression, it gets really high, then it gets really low. But I want to see it consistently be entertaining. That every single segment that you have in your set.
All right, Raish, you got the next one?
You're muted, Rishma.
Reshma, you're muted. We can't hear you. Nope. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So our next question is, are you determining placings based on points at the very end, or are you doing something based on who goes before and after intermission? Have Arnab start.
Oh, I think we already answered that. So that kind of goes back to, just so that the judges don't have to each answer it, kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, where we would have the ranking of teams at the end. All deliberations aren't going to discuss anything that happened in the first half during intermission. So we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, actually.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, right? I mean, like we won't be ranking teams or like anything after the first half, but inevitably there's like some at least discussion that happens between the judges during intermission, but it won't be like any like formal deliberation the same way that we'll have at the end of the competition.
I mean, from that question, I think, if it's like from a show order perspective, if that's how it sounded like when it was worded in that question, I don't think show order necessarily matters in my books personally, at least.
Okay. So
anyone else have any?
No.
All right, cool. Sorry. So I didn't mean to basically anything that would happen during intermission wouldn't be the final deliberations is I guess what I was trying to get at. We're not going to be ranking the teams in between and deliberating in between during intermission.
Okay, so this question, our next question, is kind of a Kush question again. For formations purposes, where will the judges be seated? A balcony or down in the front of the audience?
Okay, so the venue actually doesn't have, I don't know if you guys are able to see, we put a picture in the original application of the venue. There is no balcony seating, so there's only, it's kind of like a upward progression of the venue, and we can send another picture out to teams as well. So judges are actually getting to the competition, and they're going to decide where they think would be best to sit the day of the competition. So that's not something we're going to determine ahead of time, but we're going to block off a certain number of seats, and judges will choose where those seats are going to be. But they are all going to sit together as opposed to in different parts of the auditorium, if that answers your question.
Okay, and our last three questions, Kush will handle.
Sorry, I'm looking for them. Okay. Will we get deductions for not having a specified traditional segment? For example, jal or jugni segment. Arnab, you want to start us off?
If you somehow made it through the entire set and did not do jal, I would be quite surprised. But no, I mean, I think the sections usually will have most of everything that you need. Some people are like, oh, they didn't have a Mirza section. They said, I don't particularly care if you had Mirza or not. Some of the more less commonly used ones, I think you can decide what fits best with your dance. But like I said, we didn't include a traditionality section for this reason. We didn't want to limit you. I think y'all are captains, and you can make a decision about what things. So.
Harjot?
I agree with what Arnab said. So there isn't going to be a specific deduction if you don't have a certain segment, but I think the most common ones, like everyone's going to have a sub segment, everyone's going to have a dong segment, everyone's going to have chumar, everyone's going to have a bhangra segment, and most people, every performance that you watch has a jugni. However, not everyone does mirza. There isn't going to be a deduction for not having that in, but I guess going back to the first question, like if you have two teams that are, the same point system and one team did a segment that really stuck out and that the other team didn't have, then maybe that could be a deciding factor between who gets first and second. However, there isn't, after a team performs, I'm not going to take off points because they didn't have a mirza or they didn't have a chumar or they didn't have this or that.
Awesome, Lavesh.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think both my colleagues before said it exactly right. So,
Howie, you have anything to add?
What everyone said was perfect earlier.
Did I miss anyone? I feel like I missed someone. Keshav, did you answer?
Don't care about Keshav anyway.
That.
Harsh. Okay, so the last question that we have, as of now, teams, if you have any questions at this point would be a great time to text them in. So last question as of now is, do any of you hold any biases towards girls doing particular kinds of moves like Bertka or Tapia, etc.? Harjot, you want to start us off as a girl?
Heck no. Do whatever the hell you want to do. Do all the tapia you want to do. Do all the lalkare you want to do. You are doing Bhangra the way that it's meant to be. So don't distinguish yourself between male and female. I have no biases towards that.
Anyone want to follow that? As a note?
No, period.
Does everyone feel the same way? Just want to make sure that some boy speaks up for the girls.
we're good.
Okay.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
So that is our last question. As of now, teams, am I missing anything that anyone? All right, I just posted in there. If anyone has any final questions, now would be the time. We'll wait a couple of seconds before everyone can go to bed because it's late.
All right, we got one question.
Okay.
What happens if we don't do a Bhangra segment?
Lavesh, want to start us off?
Yeah, could you just repeat the question? Did they say if we don't do a Bhangra segment?
Yes.
It's kind of a hard question to answer because it's kind of the dance that we're doing here. I don't know. So like, I guess if you're talking about like maybe to clarify, if you're talking about like general steps, if you say you don't have like chaffa and you don't have pataka and these things that are like general steps throughout the outside of the typical tamal, jogani, mirza, all that. Yeah, I mean, you probably want to have a balance of steps. If you do, if you do a certain amount, again, like there's no set number I think you have to have, but if you don't do, you do 20 and you don't do out of 50 that you could do, I mean, that might hurt you. But I guess it's just hard to understand. Maybe if I don't know if that team can clarify. I just don't know what they mean by like a Bhangra segment.
Does anyone have anything to add to that? If before we get clarification, I'm not sure if that's a.
It sounds to me like kind of like you're like overthinking the issue a little bit. I mean, like I would again, I'd be shocked if you had a discussion at the end of the competition that a team didn't have any Bhangra. That would be like very odd. So I think you're just
Overthinking.
I think it's pretty safe to say that if you're coming to this comp, you're doing at least one. Like I would put a lot of money on it that you're probably doing at least one Bhangra segment.
Not being mean. You guys are mean judges.
I think the way that I'm seeing it, though, I think what the team might be saying is, I guess what a lot of people like to say transition segments. So segments that you would do in between, like maybe you're doing a sub-segment in the beginning, then you have a transition in the middle, and then you go to kunde, versus whether you go subs to kunde. I don't think it makes a difference to me as long as your entire set is cohesive with what you're trying to do. But at the same time, certain teams have transition segments that don't necessarily serve a purpose. So don't just throw in a segment, you know, to make your set a little bit longer. Actually make sure that that segment has a purpose, it has creativity, it has what the rubric is looking for. So not only are we judging the routine from start to finish with the rubric, but also each segment as well.
Cool. Do we have any other questions, Reshma? Or is that?
No, we don't.
Awesome. Someone was typing something and then they just stopped. Metha, do you have a question? Oh, she's typing again. Nope. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you, judges, for your time, and thanks, teams, for tuning in and asking questions. If you guys have any other questions, logistically, for me and Reshma, we'll stick around, but we're going to give the judges the rest of their night to themselves. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Does any team have any like logistical questions, maybe about your travel plans or I don't know, anything about the comp, what you're gonna eat, anything? Now's the time. Ask away.
Question.
We'll stick around for a couple minutes. You guys are welcome to like log off if you are tired of watching this. And we'll hang out and wait for questions. And if you guys have any, we'll answer them.
We will be posting a picture of our venue as a follow-up to our question number 7 in the captain's review.
Good call. Do you have those pics or do you want me to send you some?
I got it.
Can we see if anyone's still live streaming this?
I don't know how to see it.
Can you tell how many people are on it? All right, let me see if I can find a way to open it because I think it'll show you like how many people are watching.
That might help.
Tried. Okay. Tried. says 10 people are watching. If you're watching this, do you have questions or are you just watching this? I know we're really cool.
How was your guys' day today?
Mine was great. I went to work. I came home.
Great.
I ate Thai food. Who likes Thai food? Wouldn't that be lit mixer food, guys, if we had Thai food? What'd you do today, Raish?
I studied and I went to class. Studying for anatomy.
Yum.
So if anybody gets injured at the competition, I got it. Let's hope not. Though.
Okay, so me and Rachel are going to sign off now. Feel free to call us, text us, email us, Facebook message us, tweet at us. We will answer your questions. Your liaisons should be reaching out to you on this Sunday. This Sunday between 12 p.m. and 5 p.m. Every liaison is going to send their team an email, so you can look out for that team or for that email. I don't really have any other cool logistical things coming up for you. Don't forget that on the 13th is a really important day. Your rosters are due. Gimmick disclosure form, your video. The person who gets the most likes on the video is going to, so we're going to post every video to our Facebook account, and the team that gets the most likes on that Facebook video is going to win extra tech time. So that's a bit of incentive there. We're looking forward to seeing you guys' videos. Can you think of anything?
No. Just keep emailing me with any questions you may have. Keep in mind that you guys need to send in your hotel rooms to me. And then just let me know anything at any time. You can call me at any time. No problem.
Cool. Bye, guys.